Stop everything right now and lock in, because the Blue Jays universe is operating on multiple levels simultaneously today, and every single one of them has implications for what happens on March 26th and beyond. We have a pitcher who was working 3 jobs just a few years ago, including substitute teaching, and who has now generated a full Sportsnet feature from Ben Nicholson-Smith because of a changeup so devastating that Blue Jays minor league hitters say it was hard to hit even when they knew it was coming. We have a $32 million reliever who showed up to spring training with a fastball that has dropped from nearly 97 miles per hour to 92.6, which is the kind of velocity collapse that turns roster certainties into serious questions with a single radar gun reading. We have a Trey Yesvich development that is quietly one of the most important organizational decisions the Blue Jays have made since the World Series ended. And we have an organizational prospect ranking that just climbed 5 spots in the most recent MLB.com update, and which tells a story about a franchise that is defying every conventional expectation about what a World Series contender's farm system is supposed to look like. Subscribe to this channel right now, ring the notification bell, and let us go through every layer of this today, because the opening day roster is 20 days away from being finalized, and the decisions being made in Dunedin right now are the ones that will determine whether this team improves on what they built in 2025 or arrives at October with a gap somewhere that was entirely preventable. Let us start with the story that came out of nowhere and which deserves every headline it is about to receive. His name is Nate Garkow. He is 28 years old. He is 5 feet 10 inches tall, which is not the physical profile that makes scouts stand up at draft combines and reach for their phones. He attended Southern Indiana University, which is not a program that typically appears in conversations about Blue Jays pitching depth. And for the first several years of his professional career, he was not just fighting for a roster spot in professional baseball. He was working 3 jobs simultaneously to keep himself financially viable while continuing to develop as a pitcher, including a stint as a substitute teacher, because the minor league system of professional baseball is not structured to provide financial security for players who have not yet reached the top levels of the organization. Garkow did all of that. He kept working. He kept developing. And then something happened. The changeup arrived. Not gradually, not through incremental refinement, but in the form of a fully developed elite pitch that Garkow himself describes with unusual precision. His approach to it is built on a single foundational principle: protect the changeup. Have command of the fastball. Mix in the slider as a wrinkle. Keep hitters from sitting on the changeup by making them respect everything else. And when they do respect everything else, when the fastball is locating and the slider is biting and the hitter is genuinely uncertain about what is coming, the changeup with its 10 miles per hour differential from the fastball and its significant fade movement is, in the words of multiple Blue Jays minor league hitters who faced it this spring, very hard to hit even when you know it is coming. Read that again. Hard to hit even when you know it is coming. In professional baseball, where hitters have access to advanced video scouting, pitch tendency charts, and years of pattern recognition against professional pitching, generating that kind of description from the batters trying to hit your best pitch is the single clearest indicator that you have something special. Blue Jays Nation's profile of Garkow, published 2 weeks ago as he earned a big league spring training invite, broke down his arsenal in specific terms that tell you exactly why the organization is excited. The changeup generates significant whiffs and weak contact and is one of the best in the Blue Jays system. Supported by a fastball that plays above its velocity due to tunneling effectiveness and a slider that creates lateral movement against right-handed hitters, the full arsenal creates a profile that Blue Jays Nation described as a crafty reliever with potentially elite strikeout ability and low home run rates. His numbers at the minor league level back that up comprehensively. Between High-A Vancouver and Double-A New Hampshire in 2025, across 29 total appearances, Garkow posted a combined ERA of approximately 2.8 with a strikeout rate that reflects exactly what the changeup profile suggests: hitters swinging and missing at rates that do not correlate to the velocity on his fastball. The Blue Jays have built a consistent organizational philosophy around pitchers whose effectiveness derives from movement, deception, and command rather than pure velocity, beginning with Pete Walker's development of Aaron Sanchez and extending through the signings of Tyler Rogers, Tommy Nance, and Joe Mantiply. Garkow is the latest and most compelling expression of that philosophy, Except he arrived not through a free agent market or a waiver wire but through the patient, unglamorous, thankless grind of minor league development at a level where nobody was watching except the pitching coaches who kept telling him to trust the changeup. Sportsnet's Ben Nicholson-Smith published a full feature on Garkow this week describing him specifically as a candidate to be called up mid-season, not at some indeterminate future point, this season, as a candidate to contribute to a team that went to the World Series 9 months ago. When Nicholson-Smith writes a feature on a name that most Blue Jays fans have not yet encountered, the organization is sending a message about how they see that player's immediate future. The article describes him as very much on the radar of big league decision-makers and notes the fastball and changeup combinations specifically as the reason. Tyler Rogers, who is already on the big league roster and who has built his own career on the foundational principle that elite movement and command can compensate for below-average velocity, is positioned to be exactly the mentor relationship that develops Garkow from a promising organizational arm into a genuinely reliable major league contributor. The Blue Jays' bullpen depth outside their top 4 names is, as the organization has acknowledged throughout this spring, still being determined. Garkow is not just a name for future reference. He is a name for this summer. Now let us turn to the story that has been developing quietly all spring and which reached a new level of concern this week with the most alarming piece of information to come out of Dunedin in recent memory. Yariel Rodriguez signed a 5-year, $32 million contract with the Blue Jays before the 2024 season. He converted to a full-time relief role in 2025 and had a strong first half, posting a 2.47 ERA with 46 strikeouts across 47 1/3 innings. His four-seam fastball was averaging 96.8 miles per hour in April and May. He was a meaningful contributor to a team that reached the World Series. And then the second half happened. His ERA climbed to 4.21 after the All-Star break. His walk rate nearly doubled. His velocity began falling. He was removed from the wild card roster before the World Series. And the Blue Jays outright him off the 40-man roster in December, a transaction that Yahoo Sports called particularly notable given the size of his contract. Jays Journal's tracking of his spring outing last week revealed the most alarming data point of the entire situation. His first spring training appearance resulted in 6 earned runs across 2/3 of an inning with only 1 strikeout and a walk. Those are the results. But the velocity number is the real story. After averaging 96.8 miles per hour on his four-seamer in April and May of 2025, his fastball averaged 92.6 in that February appearance. That is a 4.2 mile per hour average velocity drop across fewer than 10 months. For a pitcher whose entire effectiveness profile depends on the quality of his four-seam fastball as the primary setup pitch for his off-speed arsenal, losing 4 miles per hour off the average fastball is not a rough outing. It is a structural problem that requires a biological explanation. He is 28 years old. Age should not be a factor. No injury has been disclosed. And the gap between what his fastball was doing in the first half of 2025 and what it is doing in the spring of 2026 is wide enough that the Blue Jays do not currently have plans to put him back on the 40-man roster unless injuries elsewhere create an opportunity. Rodriguez himself represented Cuba in the World Baseball Classic, pitching exclusively out of the bullpen under the Blue Jays' specific condition that he not exceed 2 innings per appearance. The organization approved his participation while making clear they were not investing significant major league planning around his availability. His WBC performance, described in the transcript as retiring all 7 batters he faced including 3 by strikeout across 2 1/3 clean innings with a fastball that topped out near 97 miles per hour, is the one genuinely encouraging data point in an otherwise deeply concerning spring picture. Jays Journal noted directly that maybe the thrill of pitching in the international tournament galvanized Rodriguez to regain the electric stuff he showed at times during the first 2 years of his career, which is an honest description of a player whose future is genuinely uncertain and whose next several spring outings after his return from the WBC will be the most important of his current contract period. He has considerable room to improve and will need to be much better to be even considered for a call-up during the season. That is not a harsh assessment. That is a fair one. The Blue Jays are watching. Now let us talk about the Trey Yesvich development that is genuinely one of the most positive and most forward-thinking organizational moves the Blue Jays have made in recent years, and which is being slightly undersold in the current coverage because the emphasis keeps landing on what it means for the 2026 season rather than what it means for the next decade. John Schneider confirmed this week that the organization and Yesvich have reached an agreement on a pre-arbitration salary for 2026, which is a significant development in the context of how the Blue Jays manage their most important young talent. Heavy.com's reporting confirmed the full picture of Yesvich's spring plan. His next outing will be another live BP session. There are no immediate plans to get him into a Grapefruit League game, and Schneider stated explicitly that the organization still views him as a starter who may be abbreviated to 3 or 4 innings to begin the season rather than 5 or 6. That is the caution. But the pre-arb agreement is the commitment. What the pre-arb extension means in practical terms is that the Blue Jays and Yesvich have already begun the process of building a financial relationship that protects both parties during the years when his arbitration clock has not yet started running in earnest. For Yesvich, it means organizational security and a demonstration of genuine belief in his long-term value to the franchise. For the Blue Jays, it means a structured path toward a potential long-term extension that could keep the best young starting pitcher in the American League in Toronto well past his initial arbitration years. The precedent the organization cited, Bowden Francis's disagreement with a pre-arb renewal, represents exactly the kind of organizational conflict they are trying to avoid by building the relationship with Yesvich early and on terms that acknowledge the reality of what he produced in 2025. 12 strikeouts, 0 walks in a World Series game. The greatest single postseason pitching performance the franchise has ever produced. The pre-arb agreement is the organization saying, "We know what we have, we are not going to take this for granted, and we are building this together from the beginning." The broader prospect context that surrounds all of these individual stories received a major update this week when Heavy.com published a full breakdown of the Blue Jays farm system ranking, climbing 5 spots in the most recent MLB.com update, from 20th during the 2025 midseason to 15th as of March 5th. That movement is extraordinary for a team that just went to the World Series, traded Carl Steven, Kendry Rojas, and Juron Watts-Brown at last July's deadline, and graduated Trey Yesvich from prospect status through his debut. Toronto has 3 prospects in the MLB's top 100, pitcher Trey Yesvich at number 12, shortstop JoJo Parker at number 45, and shortstop Arjun Nimmala at number 77, and the overall system depth below those 3 names has expanded rather than contracted following the draft and international signing work the organization has done over the past 2 years. Juan Sanchez, who hit .349 with a .565 slugging percentage in the Dominican Summer League and is described as a top 100 trajectory prospect, represents the next wave. Johnny King and his elite fastball and best curveball in the system represent the wave after that. And Nate Garkow, the substitute teacher with the Bugs Bunny changeup, represents the kind of development story that defines what the best organizational systems produce quietly and consistently while the world is watching the players with the highest draft positions. 20 days from opening day. The Garkow story is beginning. The Rodriguez situation is developing. Yesvich's pre-arb agreement is signed. The prospect system is 15th in baseball and rising. And the Blue Jays are making every roster decision with a single goal in mind. They came within 1 inning of the championship. They are not coming that close without finishing the job. Drop everything in the comments right this second and tell us what you think. Does Nate Garkow make the big league roster at some point in 2026? And does the Bugs Bunny changeup that hitters say is hard to hit even when they know it is coming translate from AA to the American League East? Is Yariel Rodriguez's velocity drop a genuine long-term mechanical problem or a spring training anomaly that corrects itself once his body is fully activated? And does the Trey Yesvich pre-arb agreement tell you that the Blue Jays are already thinking about this relationship in terms of years rather than months, which is exactly the organizational mindset that championship franchises are built on? Tell us everything. Smash that like button if you believe the Blue Jays find a way to maximize every piece of this roster and arrive at October with a championship. Subscribe to this channel right now because we are covering every development, every velocity reading, every changeup, and every roster move between now and opening day every single morning. Share this with every Blue Jays fan you know. The secret weapons are being found. Let us go Blue Jays.